Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Joy of Logistics. I'm your host. My name is Christoph, and I'm glad to be with you today. And thank you, all of us, for joining me today on my first live episode. Um, Thanks also again to Jose for this amazing opportunity. And yeah, a warm welcome once again from the sunny southern part of Germany. Yeah, I can see Benita is already there. Hello, Chris. Welcome to Edmonton, Alberta. And I can also see Abdul is in here, which is perfect. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Yeah, for those of you that don't know me, please let me introduce myself. My name is Christoph, and I've been in logistics for a couple of years now. I studied logistics together with my employer, IG Trans, and afterwards I directly started out in sales, and today I'm a key account manager, and my clients are all over the place in Europe, but also in the US, in Mexico, Canada, you name it. Yeah, I want to share with you some developments in logistics. Want to bring you guys up to date, and that's also part of the reason why I named it "The Joy of Logistics," because my bigger goal with this whole series or with this podcast is also to show you that no matter how crazy the circumstances are these days, and no matter how unpredictable everything is, especially in logistics, I want to show you that it's still fun. It's still fun. There's a lot to offer. There's a lot to do, a lot to earn, a lot to learn. And yeah, I want to create awareness and want to give you some front end experience, but also some general thoughts. Also, I want to discuss a little bit about developments that I see occurring. And I'd also love to provide you some food for thought, you know. And furthermore, yeah, first episode today. So the premiere series, the premiere episode, where I want to talk a little bit, yeah, some sort of a guidance that. Thank you, Benita. Yes, I do. Some guidance that I want to offer you in terms of how to make your overall supply chain and logistics setups more resilient, more sustainable. Yeah, especially within the current turmoil that is going on globally. I mean, as all you guys know, we basically just finished the pandemic. Then we had the war starting out in Russia and Ukraine, um, and still we see some events still caused by COVID-19. For instance, the lockdowns in China. Now Taiwan is in a pretty dangerous situation. And yeah, so what you gonna do with it, right? That's the first question, and I think a lot of people will have some similar thoughts about that, because at the end of the day, the world is so globalized and so connected, based on an economic point of view. More or less every country is doing business with almost every other country, right? And of course, the the market depth, I would say, meaning how much trade is done between two countries and whether that's more export or more import, that's a whole different story, right? But at the end of the day, there is so much going on, and we yeah, we should be informed. Of course, there's no crystal ball, and no one knows how things are developing. but at the end of the day, logistics and the economy, no matter where you are in this world, but the economy and logistics will continue to go on, as I said, because there's just this huge the huge dependence between sectors, continents, but also countries themselves, as most of you probably able to relate. Benita, thank you for your question. You probably know that Nancy Pelosi was just down in Taiwan. Yeah, simply because China is playing his muscles a bit. And yeah, it's hard to say, but they continue to do some maneuvers just in front of Taiwan. And that's just something to be cautious of, because obviously also Taiwan is highly connected. Thank you, Carl. Interconnected with the global economy and the global flow of goods, right? So without further ado, Brent, my man, great to see you. Welcome also to my live stream, to the first episode. Yeah, I wanted to start off first and foremost, based on my consideration, pricing versus concept, right? Reason I bring this up, and again, these are first-hand experiences that I've been able to gather and develop, especially throughout the pandemic. Most of you know that the rates spiked on a crazy level throughout this time, throughout the pandemic. But also availability was a huge problem, right? And with availability, I mean both equipment and also space availability. And the reason my first point is price versus concept is, and that's basically based off a lot of information that I've gathered and that I've heard from my very own client or clients from my colleagues. It's basically that they were offered a number, whatever that might be. It's at Benita, it's concepts, pricing versus concepts. And again, the reason I bring this up here is I've seen this and I've heard this a couple times where and it doesn't matter whether it was just a shipping line, whether it was a broker, a forwarder, you name it, right? And they were giving out pricing offers, quotations for air freight, for containers, for LCL. However, they couldn't obtain space, meaning at the end of the day, they were not able to execute on that given offer, right? So that's the reason why I say concept, because if there is a concept in place, which obviously comes with a quotation, sure, but if there is actually a concept standing behind what was offered to you, then you have a much better feeling, and it just makes your life easier, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you work together with someone that you entrust your goods, right? No matter how much they are or no matter their value, you want to make sure that they are properly handled and that they also arrive to your very own client, right? Because at the end of the day, logistics is a somewhat indirect market, meaning logistics or a transport can only take place when prior to that a sale took place between two companies. Would you agree? And again, so the my idea behind this point is that you want to make sure that you entrust a concept and not just a mere number, because although it has slightly improved, but still you want to make sure that you're able to get your goods shipped. You don't just want to have or end up with a number, correct? And of course, if you have questions, and that's something that I encourage everybody who's listening and who's seeing this, I encourage everybody that if you have doubt about that, meaning if there is actually something behind that number or not, pick up the telephone or write an email to whoever sent you that quotation in order to find out what the shipping window would be and whether or not there's actually something um, bookable behind the quotation or whether it's just a number, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you satisfy your client and that you make sure the cargo is going. I know it's hard these days to say as planned or as scheduled, but you want to make sure that it is moving and not sitting around. And this also is connected with my second point, meaning patch versus let's call it a repeatable concept or a repeatable setup, right? And what do I mean by that? I mean, speaking in terms of logistics, of course, there are rather spot shipments, meaning something comes more or less unplanned, or you have a continuous business that every month, every 2 weeks, every week, every day, maybe even cargo has to move. You want to make sure that they have the right approach. And by that I mean a patch works best for spot because it's I would call it ad hoc solution, satisfying your needs in terms of transportation. But at the same time, you want to make sure that if you have continuous or continuing business, that you also have a solid concept standing behind that, something that you can rely on, because also throughout the pandemic, there are more important things for you to focus on than getting your cargo out, right? You should be much more concerned about production, raw material, the whole procurement side, and also your clients, right? Because those clients are the very one that are vital for your business. So you want to make sure that you have a repetitive concept in place that you can rely on with a partner that you can rely on. Yeah, simply because it will take away a whole lot of pressure. And if you only rely on ad hoc patches, meaning ad hoc solution, spontaneous solutions, it can create some tensions, okay? Because especially if you're a small or mid-sized company and your warehouse isn't big enough, you want to make sure that the finished cargo or your finished products are moving out as fast as possible, simply because you need the space to store the upcoming production cargo, right? And that's also a little bit what's currently happening in the Ukraine. So remember, Ukraine as a country is a huge manufacturer for vegetable oils and all sorts of grain, corn, etc., you name it. And those agricultural products are stored in big silos, okay? And due to the war, they had no connection with the ports for vessels, which led to the harvest, the last year's harvest, sitting around. And other parts of the world are desperately in need of exactly these products, right? At the same time, harvest is just around the corner in Ukraine, so they require those empty silos to store the new harvest, correct? And that's what I mean, okay? So you can, of course, you can always work with patches for pretty urgent shipments or something that was just unplanned. No doubt about that. But you want to make sure that your regular shipments are moving as smooth as possible. And I know that that this is pretty easy to say these days because there's a lot of congestions. And if you've been following my post, you know also about the low water in on the Rhine or the Danube, for instance, which also has a great impact on that. But you want to make sure that these regular goods are going out, um, so you can focus on your core business or your core the core parameters of your business. I want to call it like that. I want to put it like that, right? And then another question is, and that's no matter basically how your setup is. I mean, are you working directly with shipping lines? Are you working with a broker? Are you working with a freight forwarder? But you wanna make sure that you can rely on them, right? And Benita has an interesting question here. She noted that shipping lines are working more with bigger forwarders. Yes and no. Yes and no, Benita. Great point, by the way, and thank you for bringing this up. I appreciate that. But you gotta understand that um, shipping lines and forwarders always belong together because oftentimes a forwarder, and I know that's very simplified, but I think you get this. A forwarder acts as a extended sales office for the shipping line, right? Because of course, big companies, Apple, Nokia, Mercedes-Benz, Bosch, ADM, etc., you name it, because they have so much volume, they'll work directly with the shipping line because they're able to negotiate better terms. But if you are a small mom and pop shop and you have maybe only one container a month, a quarter, whatever, a shipping line doesn't care, right? It's just too much hassle. And this is exactly where the forwarder is coming in. Because since and that depends a little bit on their procurement structure, but since they are negotiating their space agreements, etc., with the shipping line directly, they are able to take care of these smaller accounts. I'll put it like this. Okay. But an interesting point here, Benita, that's maybe a little different thing though, is that you see more and more shipping lines are buying up freight forwarders themselves, try to integrate them. Great example might be the French carrier CMA CGM, which you probably heard about. They bought up CEVA, which is a big forwarder, trying to integrate them. Same was true for Maersk buying up Damco, and the same is also true for Hamburg Süd, which is also a big shipping line that belongs to Maersk, and they are now engaging much more directly with BCOs, getting rid of all the freight forwarding business. Brent, yep, that's a fantastic comment here. You're absolutely right. They were indeed the first one to receive the first shipment. I think it was like 70,000 tons, metric tons, plus or minus. And indeed, now they backed off last minute. So yeah, going to see where this is going to lead. But yeah, that's basically the part. And I just want to circle back on Benita's question with the question on the freight forwarding and the shipping lines. It's indeed what was your question exactly? Benita, can you specify your question? Do you see shippers trying to connect directly with shippers? I just want to make sure I properly understand your question. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Balan, hello to Sharia. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. But yeah, coming back to my aspects that I want you to think about and to reconsider when evaluating your supply chain, and your resilience about that, and going hand in hand also the liability about your current setup. Yeah, initially I spoke about the pandemic, and the same thing is also true with the war now in Ukraine and Russia. Congestion is lining up and is growing. We have potential strikes, especially over in Europe. These are all impacting, and you can't really foresee them. And a lot of cargo will be affected while being already on the water, because depending where this is coming from. Yeah, it takes a couple of weeks, okay, and within those weeks, a lot can happen. That's one thing we noted for sure, right? Throughout the last years. Balan, that's a good question. I will come back on that and circle back on that in a few minutes. So the question would be also, how do you deal, or how does your logistics partner, again, this can be a freight forwarder, this can be a shipping line, a broker, how does the counterparty deal with unplanned events, right? So number one would be the question, are you receiving information? Does your counterparty, your logistics partner, reach out actively to you and inform you about a port closure, congestion, strike, low water, etc., etc.? And if he does he also come up with potential alternatives, right? Because at the end of the day, as I said, most of you are focusing on your core business. And depending where a container is coming to or going to, how would you be able to know all alternatives, right? So that's also a point where it's important to have a partner that you can rely on in terms of not just information, but also creative, out-of-the-box solutions. Okay, and I found some interesting examples on that I want to share with you here. Second. Number one would be, and this goes back throughout the pandemic, as you know, a lot of, well, mostly all travel by plane, for instance, was closed, was prohibited, and hence a lot of planes didn't fly. Okay, which also decreased the amount of, or the capacity amount in terms of available space, and also possibility in terms of flying the cargo from A to B, right? So at the same time, companies are still dependent on air freight transportation, right? Because at the end of the day, you use air freight for your top urgent products or goods to make sure and prevent manufacturing shutdown, for instance, or line down, no matter how you want to call it. And there is a great out-of-the-box solution that I want to share with you, which is, there we go, which is, this case, Egetrans, about their Praetor flight. So a Praetor is a adjusted passenger plane without any passengers, where basically the cargo also goes inside the seats and hence it is called freighter, as a mix between passenger and freighter. Okay. And reason I bring this up here, let me see. The reason I bring this up here um, is because that's an out of the box solution, right? That's an out of the box solution. The need is there. The client said, "Hey, look, I gotta move it." And what you gotta do if there is no space available, you come up with your own solution. Okay, and that's just just one great example. I also want to show you another one. Let me pull this up real quick. That's also a perfect out-of-the-box solution, which in this case is provided by UVL, which is an American forwarding company, combined with Swire, which is a trans-Pacific shipping company. It's a rather small shipping company. And they took it. They came up with the idea, hey, we need a better connection from the US to Cambodia or vice versa. And we're just not satisfied with the way it's handled or not handled currently. And what I really love about that is they came up with a unique idea. For lack of better terms, he reinvented the wheel, so to speak, in order to service this need. Hence, they looked for a partner and came up with a reliable service. It even claims it has a faster, respectively, the fastest transit time. Okay, so that's fantastic, and you want to make sure that that's something you take into consideration. Meaning, throughout this chaos and the havoc that we are in, there are a lot of fantastic solutions coming up. There is a lot that's being done from both shipping lines, but also freight forwarders and brokers in order to mitigate risks and to mitigate uncertainties and to provide you, whether you're an NVOCC or BCO directly, want to provide you with a good, reliable solution so that you know that your goods are still flowing. I just want to circle back now real quick to Balan. Let me see. That's his comment. How to optimize container space and shipping cost. And it goes on, especially for special equipment like flat rack and open top containers. Now, Balan, thank you very much for the question. I highly appreciate that. The first question would be on which trade, but what I want you to keep in mind, or an idea that you should look into, because I guess if you're asked for special equipment like flat racks and open top containers, I'm assuming probably either vehicles or some machinery or stuff like that. A great option would be to look into ro-ro carriers, which means roll on, roll off. And they have their own vessels. In fact, let me see if I can find one real quick for you, because I think that this will help you, or that this is a good help for you. So you get an idea here. This one, I think that's, yeah. So let me pull this up real quick. Perfect. There we are. Yeah. Oh, there you go. That's a ro-ro carrier. Ro-ro stands for roll on, roll off, but can be also utilized for oversized shipments. There are oftentimes some good solutions in there, some reliable solutions in there, and that's something I would encourage you to reach out to. Depending on the lane and the commodity, Balan, feel free, reach out to me. You find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a DM. I'll be more than happy to connect you with the right parties, and see how could I assist you with and support you based on my network. So that's absolutely no problem. And thanks again, Balan, for your question. And I hope I pronounced your name correctly as well. Benita, good question. No, not really. They are still operating, and in fact, there is a lot going on. I mean, car manufacturing doesn't really stop. Same holds true for truck or agricultural equipment. So there is still a lot moving, and yeah, that's definitely something that you should keep in mind, that you can work with. But absolutely, my pleasure. Glad if I could help. Then another point would be, circling back to my guidance. Other than the outside the box solutions and ideas that can and should be provided by your logistics counterparty and partner, so to speak, is also updates within the current frame or the current situation, because carriers are, and with carriers I mean shipping lines, carriers are also quite busy and quite innovative these days when it comes down to provide other alternatives, even new alternatives. I've seen this in Europe, where pre-carriages, for instance, especially last year, due to the high amount of cargo coming in, but also pushing out of Rotterdam, Hamburg, Antwerp, is being rerouted on a new corridor, at least partly, down south towards the Mediterranean, meaning towards northern Italy, but also to Slovenia, to Koper, which also allows some great solutions that you can utilize. Jose, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for bringing this up. Faster, we should. Can you give us a little bit more of an idea what you mean with faster? Do you mean in terms of the response time, the lead time, or the transit time, or maybe everything? That would be important to know, Jose. Reliable, that's definitely a good point. And yes, reliability is a high point, is very important. Okay, so for everybody to see, Jose means the transit time. For faster, I'll leave that with a big question mark, and I'll tell you in a minute why. Reliability is a big part, is a big number, is a big word, and it is highly important. But it's not just about the concept, but it's also about who's standing behind it, because you want to make sure that you're working with someone who's also able, just in case anything doesn't go as planned, who's able to assist, to push, to support, whether it's due to congestion, port closure, trucker shortages, I don't know, a customs hold, customs exam, or sometimes it's just an IT issue that you have someone on hand who's willing to dig in and to get it solved, right? Cheaper, well, we are still not on pre-pandemic levels, Jose. However, it has slightly gotten better, especially on the Trans-Pacific. So you can get it there too. However, on the faster transit time, It's close to impossible, and I'll tell you why. Just the other week, I read about a survey that was examining the shipping line the shipping line reliability based on their schedule. Okay, and if I would say the results were pretty devastating, this would be more like a compliment, because at the end of the day, they found out that number one and two, which is Maersk and Hamburg Süd, they had a schedule reliability of 49, respectively 43-ish%, which is, in other words, every second vessel. So if you would book a container on each vessel of them, you would have a 50-50 chance that you would actually get it based on the data you booked it, right? And on that's the high end. You got to keep that in mind. It's the best case, okay? And on the lower end of the continuum or the scale, you had some smaller providers that had a reliability of 20%. Okay, meaning, in other words, you could say, okay, for 80% predictability, it will take longer. It will take longer than you initially thought, and which was also initially confirmed. Okay, and this has multiple reasons. I mean, depending on the shipment, oftentimes it's congestion, infrastructure is heavily overloaded. But also, if you have to go with a transshipment port, and the transshipment port, for instance, you could, if you have a container from Hamburg to New York, you could book it directly from Hamburg to New York. Okay, it's a direct service. Or you could also book it, let's say, with a transshipment in Portugal or Spain. So it will go from Hamburg down to Spain or Portugal, will be transloaded on another vessel, and then shipped to New York, which will, of course, not only take longer, but depending on the situation in precisely this port, it could be that it will take much longer because the container couldn't get off on time, in time, okay, because there was another vessel. Then it sit around for too long because the connection vessel is delayed. Then it'll take longer until cargo comes off, and so forth and so forth. Hence, we have a huge ripple effect here, meaning that your cargo can get delayed pretty long. And on the high side, I've seen this happening, where a container was initially scheduled for, I think, 58 days transit time. Oh yeah, and I'm talking about port to port only. Okay, 58 days transit time, and I think it turned out with 86 or 87, something around like so. But there's just nothing you can do these days. There's just not much you can do. So circling back to your question, Jose, faster, more reliable, and cheaper these days, especially combined, is impossible. It's impossible. And plus, it also depends on the cargo that you're moving, okay? Because let's just assume that you're shipping dangerous goods, or even plastic resins. Not every carrier, not every shipping line accepts it, right? Because there are indeed some sort of blacklists that will be rejected if you want to book it. Okay, so it all depends again on the trade lane. It all depends on the commodity, and of course, it also depends on the overall setup. I do think, and I do believe, though, that where there is a will, there is a way. The old saying holds true, but it's a question of a couple of parameters that you gotta have in mind and that you gotta pay attention to. But what I've mostly found, based on my very own experiences, is that a lot of customers these days pay much more attention to a reliable partner, to someone that they feel actually valued, trusted, and respected. They value that much higher than saving 50, 100, or maybe even $200 on a container, because they know, okay, the other party, they get it done. And that's in my opinion the sole goal of a logistics company, being in there to get the job done. As simple as that, in theory at least. um, but yeah, coming back to my guidance, or to my points that I want to share with you today, and I want to talk to you about, and is also the aspect of the contact per se. Okay, meaning how is the reachability and how is the accessibility of your logistics partner? What do I mean by that? Well, number one is, if you have a question, you need a quotation, you're asking for a certain service or a certain concept, how fast is the response? Is there a response at all? Because I've heard that sometimes this could even take like 4 to 5 days, where is someone just responding, "Oh yeah, got it." And same holds true with the accessibility. Okay, now with all the whole home office occurring, how can you get a hold of them? How do you get a hold of your dedicated person in charge? Do you have a cell number? Do you have maybe WhatsApp, Skype, Teams, you name it? Because I think it's vital to be in a position, because so many questions arise these days, and it's vital to be in a position when something pops up and you have a question, that you can reach out to them and tackle this thing. Because sometimes, even for well, it's not that simple, but even for topics like customs, when they have a question, when they need a certain document and you can't provide it, your cargo will go on hold, and you're going to pay the storage. No matter what, no matter your name, how big your company is, it just doesn't matter, right? So it's important to have someone that you can easily reach out to, that you can easily have access to. Okay, because this makes things easier, especially if you have a new client or a new project coming up. Make sure that you take that connection that you have and share with them as much details as possible, so that they are in a position to sit down and to map out one, maybe two, with a solid backup plan, to map those strategies out beforehand, not when the project is ready, because otherwise you might be in a hurry. And then be in the comfortable position of knowing, hey, okay, that's covered. That new lane, that new project, that whatever it is covered. It will make your day so much more easier. It will reduce your level of headache so much more. It's a highly important trait that you, in my opinion, should look out for. Period. Exactly, Benita. That's a valid point here. But not only trust your partner, but also engage and collaborate with them. Be transparent with your partners, because your partner can only be as good, especially in logistics, can only be as good as the quality of information / transparency you will provide to him. Let me say that again. So not only trust your partner, but also collaborate. And it's vital that you share, and that you be transparent and share all the information that you have about whatever you're planning to do or whatever you want to adjust, so that the other party has a chance to actually do so and fulfill it. Because you have to think it the other way around. How would you know? How would you know in logistics as a shipping line, airline, blah 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 blah? How would you know whether the goods that you ask me to transport have to be at a certain place to a certain time? Because it may be for an exhibition, for a show, for a promotion, for a fair. How would you, as a logistics provider, know that without the BCO telling you? You have no idea. You just don't. You just don't. And you have to have this type of information because this small piece of information can greatly impact the whole operation. If you know that there is a certain due date or a certain deadline by which the cargo has to move or arrive, a faster schedule can be chosen, or at least offered, for both air and ocean freight. Maybe a direct setup will be preferred, although it's a little bit more expensive compared to a transload one, but it will give you the peace of mind. And it will make everything so much easier compared to you ship it and all of a sudden, because there is a congestion or what, you're getting notified, oh, we have to have the cargo yesterday because of an important project or promotion or whatever the case might be, right? And there are oftentimes a lot of factors and a lot of occurrences. I wouldn't say that can be totally avoided, but that can be mitigated and better prepared if there is a complete information symmetry, which is close to impossible. I know that too, but the more transparent you are in terms of sharing information and also asking for information, the easier it will be for everybody. Trust me, for everybody, for everybody. Okay. And other than that is also important, and this also goes hand in hand with my previous point that I mentioned. Is basically, how can I put this best? Support and consultation from your very own logistics partner. Okay. Because if you're thinking of moving something out of the box, something new, you have a new trade lane, you have a new project, sit down with your logistics partner, with your expert, provide them with all the information, make sure that he has also enough time to work a solid strategy out, and very important, ask questions. Ask questions. This is vital. Jose, yep, it's a good point. It's a good point. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, but asking questions also for you as a BCO, it is vital. If you don't understand everything, or if something comes up to your mind by the time you hear it, or afterwards, it doesn't matter. Ask questions. Ask questions. This is so vital, and this will make everything so much more easier. That's it. Trust me, this slight little thing has the possibility to greatly impact and improve your overall logistics. Thank you, Benita. Exactly. That's my point. Sit down with your partners and let them know before it happens, and let them also know before you intend to do anything. Right? This will make your life so much easier. And yeah, it's important. It's important that you keep on contacting, or that you stay in contact with your logistics partners. As I said in the beginning, in the intro, everything is is just so crazy these days. Impacted, derailed, derouted, congested. Hopefully not abandoned, but there is so much going on these days that you want to make sure you stay in touch with your very own logistics partner to make sure you're on the safe side, to make sure you're covered as good as possible. There won't be 100%. There won't be a guarantee for anything. That's also important to understand. Um, but it's important, to exchange informations all the day as much as possible, and especially if anything changes or is about to change. That's key. Benita, that's a good question. Well, you can, but what you want to know? That's probably the better question. But no jokes aside, of course you can ask question when it's on the water. Sure, why not? Why not? As I said, there are so many parameters constantly changing these days, and I think that's one thing that the pandemic has proven throughout the whole, 2 years more or less. There is a constant change. And if anything is certain, then that there is nothing 100% certain and guaranteed. Period. So you got to make sure that you stay on the watch, follow hashtag Planet Logistics, and make sure that you connect with your freight forwarder to be up to date, and also to consult with your clients, because it does make sense, depending also on the cargo. It does make sense to think about a local warehouse. Again, that depends on the setup, but or oftentimes in some cases, in some occasions, it can be an advantage. I put it like this. Yeah, so those are basically my guidances or my ideas that I want to share with you, the food for thought that I wanted to provide you, and I hope that this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, Benita, you're welcome. If you have any questions, feel free, type it into the chat box. I'm looking forward hearing your questions, just as Belan did, just as Jose and Benita did. Great shout out to you guys. That's highly important that you ask questions. And other than that, feel free, follow me on LinkedIn. Once again, my name is Christoph Scheite. You can find me there. Follow me. Follow hashtag Planet Logistics, where I frequently post about all sorts of developments in logistics. And if you have any questions also after the show, feel free, reach out to me, send me a DM. I'm happy to connect with all you guys, and I'm happy to discuss different ideas, approaches, questions that you might have. I'm there for you. And it's my pleasure to support. And other than that, as a sneak preview, my next podcast, volume 2, will be in 2 weeks, and I'll be talking about current developments on how to make global logistics not only more efficient but more sustainable. You could say greener. And this is going to be a lot of fun because it's highly interesting, and I'm looking forward seeing you guys there. And other than that, thank you everybody for joining us today, for your questions, for your interactions, and I'm looking forward seeing you next time. You take care. Bye bye.